How to make bread without yeast. Most traditional bread recipes require the use of yeast, but if you have an allergy to yeast or would otherwise like to avoid using this finicky ingredient, there are other ways to bake bread. Some recipes rely on other ingredients like baking soda or self-rising flour to give the bread lift, while others don't use any leavening ingredients at all. Pioneer salt-rising bread. Combine the first starter ingredients. Place the cornmeal 1 teaspoon 5 milliliters flour and baking soda in a 1 qt 1 L glass jar. Pour the scalded milk on top of the dry ingredients, then stir or whisk the contents together until smooth. To prepare the scalded milk, heat it on the stove or in the microwave until small bubbles form around the edge of the dish. Steam may develop, but you should not allow the milk to reach a rolling boil. Allow the milk to cool to a lukewarm temperature before adding it to the dry ingredients. 2. Keep the starter warm overnight. Cover the jar and let it stand for 8 to 12 hours in a warm place away from any drafts. Ideally, the starter should be kept at a temperature around 105 degrees Fahrenheit 40 degrees Celsius. Place the jar in your oven with the heat off, but turn the oven light on. Note that you may need to turn the light on up to 2 hours ahead of time to get the oven adequately warm. Alternatively, try wrapping a kitchen towel around the jar and placing it in a paper bag. Keep the wrapped jar in the warmest part of your kitchen. Combine the first starter with the second. Once the starter develops bubbly foam and a pungent fermented odor, transfer it to a medium mixing bowl. Add the 2 cups 500 milliliters of warm water and 1–1/2 cups 375 milliliters of flour, then stir until smooth. At this stage, the starter should have the consistency of a thin pancake batter. Let the combined starter become foamy. Loosely cover the bowl with plastic wrap and return it to the warm place used previously. Allow the starter to rise for another 2 hours. The starter needs to maintain the same warm temperature it previously had. It should bubble and nearly double in volume. Add the dough ingredients. Transfer the starter to larger bowl, then add 1 cup 250 milliliters of warm water and about 2–1/2 cups 425 milliliters of flour. Mix the ingredients until a stiff dough forms. You may need to vary the amount of flour by 1/2 cup 125 milliliters either way to achieve the right consistency. Knead the dough in the bowl until it becomes soft and elastic. Shape the dough into a loaf. Lightly grease the bottom and sides of a small loaf pan with cooking spray, then shape the dough into a loaf and set it inside. Use an 8–1/2 inch by 4–1/2 inch 21.5 cm by 11.5 cm loaf pan. Let the dough rise. Return the dough to the previously used warm spot and allow it to rise for another 3 hours, or until it climbs about 1/2 inch (1.25 cm) above the top of the pan. Near the end of the rising time, preheat the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit 175 degrees Celsius. Bake for 35 to 40 minutes. Place the pan in your preheated oven and allow the bread to bake until it turns light golden brown in color. Note that the bread typically won't rise much as it bakes. If you gently tap on the outer crust, the bread should have a slight hollow sound once it's ready. Enjoy. Remove the bread from the oven and turn it out onto a cooling rack after about 5 minutes. Serve the bread once it becomes cool enough to handle. You should be able to stare this bread at room temperature for about a week or in the refrigerator for 2 weeks. You can also freeze it for long-term storage.